Welcome. We're going to be talking about Chapter 4, Means of Egress, Part 3. What I want to do is to be able to look and understand a little bit about Chapter 4. So Chapter 4, Means of Egress. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to get your textbook out and your IBC code book, and you're going to see that there's different tables and stuff in this first slide. I want you to go through and I want you to tab all of these so that you'll be able to review them. If you haven't read some of the chapters, then you need to do that. Okay, next we're going to talk about the problem. The problem, and I want to kind of give you this little scenario so to see how much you know and what you need to reread in your code books. So if you don't mind, let's look in your IBC code book under Chapter 3, Use and Occupancy Classification. So the problem or the scenario is a nightclub, and it's 2 stories. The first story is 100 feet by 155 feet, and the second story is 100 feet by 75 feet. So the first thing we need to do is determine our occupancy classification. So if we go back and look at our classifications, you can see nightclubs registered right here. Okay, get a little closer look. And you can see it. So it's an Assembly Group A2 nightclubs. So now we've got to go back and we've got to look at Table 104.1.2, which we're all familiar with. We've used that so many times in this particular last semester, so our last session, I should say. And we have assemblies, okay, and it's going to be tables and chairs because it's a nightclub and they're going to be seating and stuff. So now we know that we've looked at here tables and chairs. It's going to be 15 net. So we've got to take our square footage of 100 times 155 comes up to 15,500, and we're going to divide it because it's concentrated tables and chairs with 15 net. That gives us, of course, the occupancy of 1,033. Okay, 1,033. So how many exits do we need, and where do we go to find this information? So if you look at figure 4.16 in your textbook, okay, that means looking at that, which is, I gotta turn to mine. Go back and look in your textbook and you will see there's this particular table. This table is a great table. It's a way of looking at things in your book. The information is in the IBC code book, but is not in table formation. Okay, so I want you to kind of keep this in mind. I always kind of write this out to the side because that means for if I have 1 to 500 people, I've got to have a minimum of 2 X's. If I have 501 to 1,000 people, I have to have a minimum of 3 remote, let me say that, remote exits. And if I have more than 1,000, I've got to have 4 remote exits. So where do we go in our IBC code book? That means we've got to go and look at table 1021. Okay, look at 1021. And you can find the information written in through here. And so what we're doing is we're seeing this, of course, in the book where it says number of exits and exits configurations. Okay? So it's telling you how many exits and stuff that you have to have. Stairways based on occupant load, the value of that. So it's going to tell you single units, how many you have to have down toward the bottom here. And then if there's 3 or more exits. So if you read through here, 3 exits or exit access stairways or ramps providing access to exits or other storage shall be divided. It tells you 5 under 1 to 1,000, of course, 3 and 4 exit or exit access stairways or ramps providing exits for anything more than 1,000. So it's kind of giving you that information. But you have to read through all this to be able to understand that. That's why I like the table format, and that's why a lot of times I just write it up here in the margin so I'll have it. But you've got to know 1 to 500 is a minimum of 2 remote exits. And I keep saying remote because they have to be far apart. They can't be 2 exits right next to each other. Okay, so now we've learned that we have, of course, 1,033 occupant load. That means we have to have 4 remote exits. So if you go back and look in your text at table 419, get to the table here, 419, you're going to see this particular table, which comes out of the Life Safety Code book, which is a great table, but you find it in written format in the IBC code book. So this is kind of telling you area. This is the number of widths of stairs, the width of the stairs, using, of course, this in inches. And it says width per person, of course, level components and ramps. Level components means doorways, ways of getting out. It could be an open amphitheater and you don't have a door per se, but an opening in between something. So this is it in inches. You notice it says board and care, health care sprinkled, health care non-sprinkled, high hazarded contents, and all others. So all others, of course, would be 0.2. That's what we're going to be working with. So when we're looking at it, we've got to find that in the components of 105.3. So let's turn back to 105.3. And you're going to see where it's all written in through here. It talks about right here stairways, and through here giving you 0.3, and it says over here other egress. The capacity in inches means of egress components other than stairways shall be calculated by multiplying the occupant load served by such a component by means of egress capacity factor of 0.2. So you need to highlight this so that you'll be able to work through here. So now you ask, what do we do now? Well, we know the component is 0.2. So we're going to end up taking, of course, the 0.2, and we're going to take the 1,033, because that's our occupant load, times 0.2, okay, or 0.2, equals 206.6 inches. Well, we know we have to have 4 remote exits, and we have to have the exits have got to add up totally to be 206.6 inches, okay? So you're going to take those 4 exits, and you're going to divide it into 4. So that comes up, you're taking the 206.6 inches divided by 4, comes up to 51.65 or 52 inches. You always round up. So each 4 remote exits have to have a minimum of 52 inches opening, a doorway. Well, just think about this. We've learned in the past that doorways, of course, have to be a minimum clear opening of 36 inches to meet ADA requirements. So we can get one 36-inch door out of the 52, but that means the other doorway would be smaller. So we've got to then, ADA kind of falls into place, and that means we'd have to have 2 36-inch doors for each doorway or exit remotely. Okay, so what else have we learned? Let's go back to section 105.5 and look at that to make sure that we read it. And you will end up learning, of course, that it says in here, point 5, distribution of egress capacity. Where more than one exit or access to more than one exit is required by means of egress shall be configured such that the loss of any one exit or access to one exit shall not reduce the availability capacity to less than 50% of the required capacity. Well, okay, so that means if we go back and we need 206.6 inches, less than 50%, now they're saying that each exit has to be at least 103 inches. So let's go back and let's look. Let's take a plan that we have here. So if we're looking at it, that means if this was blocked and they end up having to go through these 3 exits or 4 exits, then that means that you've got to have at least 50% of those working to be able to access out of the building. In addition to, when I say 4 remote exits, that means you're taking, if it works out that this is a rectangular room, you're taking your furthest length, okay, and you're going to divide it by 2. So let's say this is 200 feet long, and you divide it by 2, then that means this doorway has to be, the next doorway has to be at least 100 feet from the next doorway. So each doorway has to be a minimum of 100 feet away. Same thing on the second floor. Okay, so let's go back to make sure you understand that. Look in your textbook on page 194. I get to page 194 here. And there's a whole section on this arrangement of exits and stuff. But let's look at the diagrams on page 196. This is showing you a kind of the diagonal method. It's in your text. So if you have unusual shapes, you've got to look and figure out what the longest distance is. And you measure this length. If it's 50 feet, half of that is 25 feet. So that means if I have one doorway here, I've got to go a minimum of 25 feet here. So if I have 2 rooms, because this is intervening rooms, remember you have to walk through one room to get through. That means I'm measuring, of course, this total length. Half of it is what I've got to do. These 2 doorways have got to be at least half apart. And then these 2 doors have to be at least half the distance. Whatever this total is, half of it. Okay? So you kind of look at that and understand. If we have an odd-shaped room, then this total long distance, you can't measure from here to here because that would be shorter. I have to take the longest length. Okay? Half of that, that means that door could be there and that door here. So we've got to do our remote exits. Now, you could go back and look in 1015.1. Get to 1015.1. And it's telling you, of course, the diagonal method. Distance equal not less than 1/2 of the length. So it's written in a format here. The maximum overall diagonal dimension of the building or area to be served measured in a straight line between exit doors or exit access doorways, interlocking or scissor stairs shall be counted as one exit stairway. So it's telling you half of the diagonal. So that's kind of where you find that information out. It discusses, of course, all of those in the tables. In addition to, you have to look at your travel distance. Okay? What do we mean by travel distance? That means these are your occupancies. This is telling you how far you can go remotely, okay, from one place to another without a sprinkler system, 200, business 200, storage, utilities, factories 300, and a lot of them are not required. So what am I talking about? That's if we were to look at this. Let's just take, for an example, we had a hotel, and we had one hallway all the way down in the hotel, and it had all of these rooms going down, rooms, all different types of rooms. But we only had 2 exits that goes out. Could be the same floor, or it could go to the stairs. So that means I find my middle room, farthest corner, 1 foot from the corner, and I would measure, if I went around a bed, I'd have to measure all that, out the door and down the hallway. And so where is it to my exit? How far is that distance? So what we're talking about, that's more like a residential, which is R, right? So it's telling you without a sprinkler system, I can only travel 200 feet. That means I have to have within that furthest corner, I have to have an exit to the outside or to a stairway, rated stairway. I can only travel 200 feet. So you've got to keep that in mind. So all of these tables kind of build upon one another. Okay, I kind of hope it's a little bit of a scenario that you will go through and you will look at everything and kind of work through. So get ready to go to the next PowerPoint.